Semper Fi, do or die.
Kill, kill, kill.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this special edition that we're doing. Today's date is November 4th, 2025, and this special video will air on 10 November 2025 for the 250th anniversary of the United States Marine Corps, or as you Marines and Docs call it, your second birthday, or for some of you, even your first birthday, depending on that association there. My name is Zach, and I will be hosting us today. Before me, for the viewers out there, there are, or should have been, 14 Marine Corps and Navy Corpsmen veterans. We've been able to at least amass as many as we can, um, who, with a wide array of service, from pre-Vietnam all the way to Iraq. If everyone was able to make it, I did the math, we were looking at over 200 years of total Marine Corps service and legacy between the 14 people that could have possibly been here. First, thank you all for your service and thank you for being here. It's my honor to be your host tonight. With that being said, each and every single one of you have a important legacy that you will carry on as Marines, as docs, with your families, and on when you are no longer here. The purpose of this video is to give a special shout out to the Marines and docs that made an impact for you. To the Marines and docs out there for the 250th birthday, from Tun Tavern, Quantico, Lejeune, Pendleton, 29 Palms, and other Marines and docs deployed around the world, thank you for your service. A bit of history for our viewers out there that perhaps don't know a legacy in the history of the Corps. The Marine Corps was founded on 10 November 1775 under the leadership of then Captain Samuel Nichols. The Marine Corps has fought in every major American conflict and numerous other smaller conflicts. Places like Veracruz, Bellawood, Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, Chosin, Quezon, Hue, Anhua, I Corps, for those of you Marines that served that far north, Beirut, Grenada, Desert Storm, Fallujah, Al-Anbar, Sangin, and numerous other places echo in the annals of Marine Corps history. Just some other facts here. There have been 297 Medals of Honor awarded to Marines since 1862. 23 Medals of Honor have been awarded to Navy corpsmen, surgeons, and chaplains serving with Marine units. Over 2,000 Navy Crosses have been awarded to Marines, with 179 Navy Crosses being awarded to the docs, and tens of thousands of other Valor Awards and letters of commendation in the history and legacy of the Corps. But many of you out there perhaps didn't receive letter of commendation or letter of valor. As you tell everyone, and some of you have told me, you just did your job and came home. The legacy of the Marine Corps and the actions of the Navy corpsmen will echo for millennia to come. What brings us all here today is that each of the guests here, I have at least one Marine or Navy corpsman that they are choosing to honor for the 250th birthday. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our first guest speaker, Sean Rhodes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Rhodes, and I served with the U.S. Marine Corps from 2001 to 2005. I was in boot camp when the Twin Towers were hit on 9/11, and I was with some of the first units into Iraq in 2003 and again in 2004. My MOS for the Marine Corps, my job was as a combat correspondent, designator 4341. And that means, like a few people that are on this call, I was paid to make sense of a lot of chaos with a camera, a notepad, and whatever sanity I could pull together for that day. The story of the Marine that I want to honor begins with my second deployment through Iraq. I was attached to one infantry battalion the whole time, and this infantry battalion had no idea what to do with a writer because they were war fighters first. These were frontline infantrymen. So the first duty they gave me was to process administrative papers because they thought I was an administrative Marine, S1 Marine. The only lifeline that I had back to public affairs was a Marine who impacted me the most during my 4 years, and his name was Gunnery Sergeant Mark Oliva. I met him a couple of times because he was at Camp Fallujah and I was at a different forward operating base, but he was my non-commissioned officer in charge, the man who was looking over me. And he existed as a disembodied voice on the field phone for most of my deployment. I didn't get to see him very often. But his personal mission, because he was a gunnery sergeant and because he knew I was one of his Marines, it was to remind me that mediocrity was a cardinal sin. When there was nothing left to fix from the work that I was sending him, he didn't have any technical corrections that he could make on my stories. He told me to stop writing like a Marine and start writing like a writer. He told me to read Ernie Pyle, Hunter S. Thompson, and a few other authors. He wanted me to feel what I was seeing and to translate that into writing, to turn the sweat, blood, and noise of combat that we were experiencing there into something that could reach people who would never experience it but needed to know what their fellow citizens, these men and women we were serving with, were going through in Iraq. That stuck with me and influenced me on my own career trajectory. So the Marine Corps gave me discipline, resilience, and an addiction to accountability. But it was Gunny Mark Oliva who gave me a taste for turning whatever job that I did into a craft. He flipped the switch, and I've been chasing that current ever since. So thanks, Gunny Oliva, to all the Marines out there. Semper Fi, and happy birthday.
To Gunny Oliver. Cheers. Thank you, Gunny.
Cheers.
Sean, that was brilliant. Thank you, my friend. But most importantly, Sean, welcome home. All right. For our next speaker, I'd like to introduce a very good friend of mine, and one of the Marines I will be talking about later in this episode. But without further ado, Bernie Bernston, if you could tell us a little bit about what led you to the Marine Corps, your legacy, and a Marine you'd like to remember today.
Wow, what an order! What an order, Zach. Well, what inspired me to get in the Marine Corps was the draft board. Uh, you know, it wasn't a big choice. I'd already been asked not to come back to college until I matured a bit, and so anyway, I was just trying my best to figure out what to do when the second draft notice came. So I figured, okay, and I went to the Marine Corps and signed up for 2 years. Ended up spending 5. But anyway, uh, my sense of humor is a little off today. But anyway, I would like to reply to the outline. My name is Steve Burnson, Sergeant, USMC. My MOS was a 4312. Started out as an 0331, but I got smart and re-enlisted for combat correspondent photographer. And that was my years of service. I signed up in September of 1965 and I got medically retired in October of 1970. And my time in country was rather interesting because, as Sean, the gentleman before me, pointed out, that they didn't know what to do. Most of the infantry companies that I traveled with and wrote stories on didn't know what to do with me. And of course, the only way you can get stories is you have to have been there with them, and they see you there, and you're involved in the operation like they are, and that allows you to go in and say, "What did you tell me about that story about the mine that you fell into?" If you wait until I get back to the battalion or division and say, "What was the stories you guys had out there?" You can imagine what the combat veterans grunts will say. If you want to know, come with us. And so that was kind of my modus of operandi. Was I went with Second Battalion, First Marines, and I went with First Marines, First Battalion, First Marines, and 215 Delta at Way, and 325 Hotel in Way. And I wrote most of my stories up in Dong Ha, Contien, uh, the Rock Pile. Pretty much covered them all. The interesting thing about the MOS was you were basically really on your own. So it was necessary that, you were sent out there and you had some staff sergeants back in the rear that you were supposed to account to, but it was difficult because we never knew where we were going to be. So that's why we got our mail once a month, paid once a month, because we were out in the field most of the time. But uh, how has it Marine impacted me personally? Well, it's been the touchstone for my life. It's been one in which I've searched out certain other Marines and found that my characteristics and my character has been formed by the Marine Corps experience. Uh, I would like to talk about the person that inspires me the most, and to this day he's still considered my personal hero, and that's Colonel James Cooligan retired. Cooligan was a captain when I first met him in the streets of Way City, and I briefly met with him, asking if he knew any AFVN radio station personnel because they were supposed to have been at MACV compound. And the Army major that was there said, I don't know anything about that, but you go over and talk to that captain. He's in charge here. And Colonel Captain Cooligan at that time had actually been the man that saved MACV compound in the early hours of the Tet Offensive. You should read his Navy Cross recommendation. It's outstanding. The man risked his life over and over again to carry wounded. He organized a disorganized group of people inside the MACV compound to keep them going and to actually held off sabotage at the gate by himself personally firing. And anyway, he was very instrumental, and he was a co-band. His main rule was he was a co-band for working with the Ba with the Akbao, which was a very highly thought of, highly decorated, and highly effective group of South Vietnamese Rangers. And when he was in Hue, he'd gone to the MACV compound to stand down for the holiday, and was there when the next day when they started coming through the gate. And it was he is the man that everybody will admit saved the MACV compound. And then he went across the river and got linked up with his his South Vietnamese unit and staved off an attack on the First Division airfield, which was vital in keeping. Anyway, I recommend him for someone who wants to read a bit about many stories about valor, but Colonel Cooligan's story is very instrumental, and I have had the opportunity of meeting him and becoming his friend because after he retired from the Marine Corps, he came to work in Spokane, Washington, as the head of school administrative assistants. And one day, a friend of mine said, somebody asked me about if I knew a Cooligan. And I said, I do know a Cooligan. And so he told me where Jim was. I went to see him, and it was a great reunion because the time that we both agreed, we spent very little time
That happens with Bernie's Wi-Fi. We can.
in
There we go.
Way in the back. And he be superintendent of Kitsap County uh, School District, and retired from that, and it just passed away in October this year. Uh, that's he, he impressed me with what I consider to be the essence of leadership, humility, and bravery. And I have a picture. I was invited to Arlington for his. I don't know if I can get it in there or not.
Bring up the picture a little bit, Bern. Bernie, if you send me a photograph of the picture, we can edit it and put the picture in the recording.
Sure.
Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bernie, as always, you're one of my closest friends when it comes to the friends I've made that were Marine veterans. You've become a mentor to me in many ways. But Bernie, welcome home to you and a toast to Colonel Cooligan.
Thank you. Thank you, Zach.
I'd like to bring in our next guest, fellow Vietnam veteran that was also in Way City, Dan Moore.
Thanks, Zach. I actually have two Marines I like to remember, but let's start with the one, and at the end, we can do the other one. I served on active duty for 4.5 years, from 1966 to 1971, and retired from the reserves in 1993. During my 13-month tour in the Vietnam War, I served as an RD officer, FO with Golf Company 25, then as a fire support coordinator with 25, then as a battery officer for the remainder of the tour. I'm the son of a career Navy officer who spent a month in 1942 manning the defensive lines of the Marine base at Guadalcanal. After his ship, the USS Laffey, was sunk in the November naval battle of Guadalcanal. After college, I joined the Marine Corps, which I considered to be the best fighting force to help win the war in Vietnam. Going through training at OCS and the basic school, it had never crossed my mind that we would not win that war. But increasing doubts crept in soon after I arrived in Nam, in the absence of what I thought were achievable goals. But I never lost a deep respect for the Marines I served with. I witnessed the daily sacrifice, courage, and heroism of those around me. That respect for fellow Marines has continued all my life. Whatever I have achieved in this lifetime, I am sure it has been due in part to my service and the lessons in life from serving in the Marine Corps. As we all know, once a Marine, always a Marine. I lost my assistant board observer, Lance Corporal Ken Stetson, in the Battle of Hue during the 1968 Tet Offensive. He had taken over as FO in Golf Company when I left the field a month earlier. I had the great fortune of speaking with him before he was medevac and died from a gunshot wound. At the end of the fighting in Hue, I spent a month in Okinawa at embarkation school. There I met Lieutenant Stephen Joyner, who was the executive officer of Lima 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines at the time. We forged a close friendship and shared confidences we would not have been able to do in country. We had the time to discuss what we had experienced in Nam up to that point and what we hope to do after we return to the world. I told him about Stetson and what Stetson had achieved, how he became a de facto member of Golf Company, respected by all the grunts. Joyner understood immediately and totally when I told him about Stetson. He was a unique warrior, a true believer in the Marine Corps and our mission in Nam, and had a way of connecting with everyone he knew. He had made the difficult transition from football hero at San Diego State to a Marine officer beloved by his men. We returned to combat after embarkation school. After saying we'd meet again, perhaps on R&R. He was killed 3 months later, leading a counter assault against an enemy incursion in his company's defensive lines. In 2000, over the year 2000, over 30 years later, his machine gun squad leader at the time wrote on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund Wall of Faces. Lieutenant Joyner was a friend, a leader, a fine Marine. He saved a lot of lives, including mine. He had compassion for his men. He treated everyone like a man instead of some fighting machine. I was proud to serve with him and fight alongside of him. After Lieutenant Joyner died, I helped put him on a chopper, and I carried his helmet and cartridge belt for the rest of the time I was in Vietnam. I will never forget him as long as I shall live. God rest his soul. When I read his name among the casualties listed in the Stars and Stripes shortly after Joyner's death, I pledged to one day write his story. In 2016, nearly 50 years later, I published Promise Lost, his cradle to grave saga. That's it.
Dan, thank you, my friend. It's been a pleasure to get to know you over the last year and a half. Dan, welcome home, and to Lieutenant Joyner.
Lieutenant Joyner.
Joyner.
I'd like to bring in my next friend, someone I met in 2022 who was so kind to welcome me to a reunion of the 5th Marine Division Association in San Diego, California. He actually helped introduce me to a company of mine that has become very dear to me, Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, 27th Marines, and their time on Iwo Jima. Ray Elliott.
Thank you, Zach. My name is Ray Elliott. I was influenced by Marines long before I went in the Marine Corps. My barber was a Iwo Jima veteran that I've written about in Leatherneck magazine. And he was a great influence. I joined the Marine Corps just as soon as I got out of high school. And the second one that influenced me greatly was my drill instructor, Staff Sergeant Robert A. Masters. Said he was the best damn Marine Corps DI in the Marine Corps. But I went on, and I've been influenced by a number of them. But it was after I was out of the Marine Corps that I want to talk about a man. I want to talk about, and I'm going to show you this picture right here. Colonel Severance, Dave Severance, was E-227. He was the CO of E-228, excuse me. And this is the flag raising thing. I met Dave when I was editing Spearhead magazine for publication for the 5th Marine Division Association. I made a mistake, a little mistake one day in the article about the flag raising, and he told another guy, said, that's another one of those damn flag wannabes writers. So I called him up and I told him, I said, I made a slight mistake, but I will correct it, and I'm sorry about that. He said, oh, well, he said, you know, I probably over exaggerated that just a little bit. He said, now, you know, my mother was an Elliott, don't you? And I said, no, I didn't. He called me cuz after all the time after that. And when he died at 102 years old, I visited him several times, talked to him on the phone and everything. After he was on Iwo Jima, he went to flight school, got the Distinguished Service Cross in Korea, or not Flying Cross, excuse me. He died in 2022, I believe it was. But anyway, after he was out of the Marine Corps in 30 years, he started receiving a lot of the letters he called wannabes. And these were people who said that they had raised the flag on Iwo Jima. They had gotten the flags, they had gotten the poles, they'd done the most craziest one was a Marine that in 1992 told a reporter up in Washington State that he had flown a P-38 from Honolulu to Iwo Jima, landed with a flat tire and out of fuel. The Marines filled his tank up with fuel, and that would have had the men in 5-gallon cans, and got him a new tire, and he went up and helped raise the flag, got in his plane and flew back to Honolulu. And a newspaper reporter, a television reporter carried that. So at any rate, I started talking with him, and he had, I visited him several times, and he would tell me about these things or share the stories with me. And right before his death, he told me about this memoir that he had written. And I have a small publishing company, Tales Press. I tried to find somebody else to publish it, but we finally published it, and it's been doing very well at this point. But Dave was a very humble man. He said he didn't know why he got the Silver Star on Iwo Jima. He said, "I don't know what I did to get the Distinguished Flying Cross or anything like that." And he always welcomed me and my family when we were in California to see him. And right before his death, he sent me more than 60 file folders of those wannabe stories that he had gotten letters from. Some of them were from the media. Some of them were had probably told their families big stories or whatever. But I met him many, many years after I was in the Marine Corps. But I think he had more influence on me than just about anybody else. This book is a historical perspective of what happened in Iwo Jima with E-227, 228, excuse me. And I think that if it hadn't been for what he did in a lot of cases, you would have you would have been reading a lot of stories that had no truth about them at all. And he could never understand why anybody would tell the truth, but not tell the truth. I had learned that from my father and from Ben Carell, who was an Iwo Jima veteran, and from Sergeant Masters in boot camp. But I think that Colonel Dave Severance was probably the most influential person. I met him years after, and I already had my Marine Corps training and everything else. And I was a Marine from. I taught high school, and they used to tell me that I used to run my class like a boot camp. I don't know whether that's true or not, but it was a lot easier for me to check the roll if I put them in alphabetical order. And I taught English and journalism, and it was the Marine Corps and Dave Severance were probably one of the biggest influences on me, besides my father, who was also a very honest person. And but Dave was he was very welcoming when I would go there. As I said, he would call me cuz. A lot of time, no relation or anything like that. But this book really squares away a lot of the stories, and he's got some stories in there. Some of the 60 file folders, more than 60 file folders. He's got some of those claims in here, and the one of them is about the P-38 flying from there. But Dave he didn't get paid for this. He did have a role in the Clint Eastwood movie there. I mean, he wasn't in it, but he was a consultant for it, and there was a character in there about him. But I think I've written another book called the Iwo Jima, Iwo Blasted Again, and I've written Wild Hands Toward the Sky about the military, and all of those people that I grew up with had the same qualities that Colonel Dave Severance did. And I've appreciated the opportunity to do what I've done for Dave. He gave me this book, gave me the rights to this book to publish through Tales Press, and you can go on Tales Press and see a lot of the other military stuff that we've done. But Dave remains, years after the Marine Corps, probably one of the most influential people that I have ever had the opportunity to meet. And I've been to Iwo Jima 5 times. I've been to the Philippines. Well, I was stationed in the Philippines. Worked for 18 months. Worked in one of the last Red Line brigs in the South Pacific. And I thank David Severance for everything that he gave me and showed me, because we've sent his file folders back to his executor of his estate, and I think she's going to put them either in Fredericksburg or the museum in New Orleans. So that's basically my story, and I could tell you about a lot of other people, but Dave is the one that sticks in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. I actually got to meet Colonel Severance's niece in San Antonio, and she was a very humble lady. And I've been in contact with her, just talking about the man that she knew as her uncle. And I think one of my favorite facts about Colonel Severance is he was a paramarine. I love paramarines and
Yes, he was
researching that.
very, that's
And
what I forgot to say that.
that's
Yeah.
one of the blues right there
Yeah.
of a paramarine that was there. So Ray, like everybody else, welcome home. Thank you for being my friend and to Colonel Severance.
Colonel Severance.
Our next guest that I'd like to bring on, a good friend of mine that I've had the opportunity to meet in person, not just through Zoom. He's put on some excellent plays, but is a renowned writer, and he used his experiences in Vietnam as a Force Recon doc. So, Doc Norton, I bring you on.
Well, good evening, Zach, and gentlemen, good evening. Pleasure to be here with you all. Forgive me as I'm trying to fight through a little bit of a sinus cough and cold, but I'll tell you this short story. There are probably two individuals that I would recognize, and the first is a uh, well-known Marine by the name of Clovis C. Bucky Kaufman. He was our operations officer in 3rd Force Recon. And the second individual is a Navy chaplain by the name of Ray Stubbe. So I'll back up and tell you that I started out my military career as an 8404 Navy Hospital Corpsman. I went to Corps School at Great Lakes and then to Camp Lejeune for Field Medical Service School and then Newport Naval Hospital before going over to Vietnam. I volunteered to go with 3rd Force Recon Company, and then I participated in 18 long-range missions with 3rd Force. Then I went to scuba school, jump school, and went back on a second tour in Vietnam, this time with 1st Force Recon. And ultimately got out of the Navy, went back to college, took a commission in the Marine Corps and retired in 92. I became the director of the Marine Corps Command Museum in San Diego for 5 years, then went to the Citadel as a Marine Corps TAC officer for 8 years, and then up to Quantico to write doctrine for the Marine Corps. So my association with Bucky Kaufman that is inspirational to me was Kaufman was a first lieutenant when I met him. And at that time, he had already received the Navy Cross, 3 Silver Stars, 5 Bronze Stars, and 7 Purple Hearts. He'd come up through the ranks from private to first sergeant and retired out ultimately as a colonel. He passed away, probably about 20 years ago in Virginia Beach. Ray Stubbe was a jump qualified Navy chaplain who we called the Leaping Deacon. And I met Ray because he was very, very interested in the Marine Corps Special Operations. And he came and interviewed my former company commander, Alex Lee, who was the SEAL of 3rd Force Recon when I was there. And he wanted to do a book on force reconnaissance. And he ultimately did one, co-authored a book with a guy named Michael Lee Lanning called Inside Force Recon. But it was not, in my opinion, very well received because there was a lot of Army terminology and slant to this book. Ray mentioned me in the book, and I wrote a letter to Ray thanking him for the copy. And he sent it to Random House. And I was at a major at Quantico, and the phone rang, and I answered the phone, and the gentleman on the other end said, "My name is Owen Locke. I'm the vice president of Random House, and I'd like to know if you'd be willing to write about your experiences in Vietnam." And that's what started I guess, a career in writing. I've now authored 16 books on Marine Corps history and military history for Random House, Naval Institute Press, and Academica Press. The reason that Kaufman stood out was because he really was a believer in General Lejeun's philosophy or ideology that officers should be teachers and Marines, young Marines were their students, and they too someday would become teachers. And he didn't teach us things because I said so kind of a guy. It was I'm trying to teach you things that will save your life based upon 3 tours in Vietnam. And the same with Norman Heisler, our company executive officer, and Alex Lee. So that had a profound influence on me as to, in my opinion, the correct way to treat and educate Marines, because they all brought something to the classroom, every single one of them. So it was always in the back of my mind how Kaufman presented himself to us in any kind of a training scenario. And Stubbe, of course, was very influential in me getting started as a writer. When I say getting started, Owen Locke, as the vice president, told me that he said, on any given day, and this is back in 1989, 1990, on any given day, he would receive 1,500 manuscripts per month for people that believed they had a story. And he said 1 in 10,000 would see the light of day at Random House. So I was very fortunate where I didn't write a story and then try to peddle it around to the different people that were going to publish this book. They called me, and that was the beginning of it. So now that's kind of branched out, and I've done 2 plays with Dr. Harry Kantrovich. One is called Voices from Vietnam, and the next one will premiere next May here in Virginia, and that's titled Saving Lives, and it's the stories of medics, corpsmen, doctors, nurses, and dust-off pilots. So that is also, I've written an accompanying book that expands. The play will have probably 10 examples, and I think I've got about 25 in the book. It's maybe close to 300 pages now, and I'll put it to bed here at the end of the month. So those 2 people stand out to me as great examples of leadership and the way they approached education in the Marine Corps, because it's always an ongoing process, and it's a 2-way street. The Marines learn from us, and we certainly do learn from them. So it's a pleasure to be here with you all tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity, and happy birthday.
Doc, happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, yeah.
Yeah, all
Thank
you
you.
guys. Seriously, happy birthday to all of you. I know it's a week in advance, but that's not the point. It'll air on the day of.
We'll take it. We'll take it.
I know you will, Vern. But you mentioned Ray Stubbe, and that strikes a special place in my heart. I've never had the fortune of talking with him or meeting him, but I've read his books, and one of which stays on my nightstand because the story that he wrote, and this is a rare book of his, Pebbles in My Boots, Ray Stubbe. This volume of Pebble in My Boots, which was helped published by Chaplain Stubbe, was about the Ghost Patrol. If any of you know anything of that with Cason, and a platoon from Bravo Company 126 that went out beyond the wire. And I'm gonna get some facts wrong here, but if memory serves me correct, only 7 of those Marines came back inside the wire after that patrol. But Stubbe was the chaplain at Cason, and any or one of the chaplains at Cason, but anyone that was at Cason can tell you about Ray Stubbe, and the impact he has had for the Cason Veterans Association, and what he means to those Marines. And so, Doc, welcome home, but to Chaplain Stubbe, and as well, of course, as to the XO. His name's escaping me right now because I'm tired. Doc, please bring it back. Help me remember his the first Marine. I think right
Norman
now.
Heisler.
So, a toast and a cheers, Doc. Thank you for this,
Thank you
Doc.
very much.
So, without further ado, I'd like to bring on our next speaker. I'm introducing Rick Jablonski. If you would like to, sir, floor is yours.
Yeah, I don't know why you would make me follow all of this badassery that just came ahead of us. Oh my God, these gentlemen. Yeah, I was a Navy corpsman. I served from 2007 to 2013. Had a good friend of mine in high school named Chris Cobb, who actually passed away in Iraq, and it really affected a lot of us. And it got me to, I don't know, feel motivated to get into the military. And one of my other friends, James West, went into the Marines. And of course, like a little brother, I just decided to follow him into the Marines. But of course, I couldn't handle the crucible, so I decided to join the Navy, and decided to go FMF Corpsman because it just seemed like a good honor to be with the United States Marines after I've learned everything about them at that point. I went to FMSS in Camp Pendleton, Del Mar, and that's also where I met Kevin, who was the Marine I wanted to mention for today, because he was basically the first Marine that I got a chance to be basically like brothers with, because he moved into a place right next door to me on base. And I did everything that I could to try and get into the 15th MEU. And I actually was able to do that because I was lucky enough to know him. Unfortunately, he was kind of on his way out. You were on your way out, right, Kevin?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that transition was, it was one of those things where he was just kind of like passing the torch on to me. And like from that point on, I knew exactly what it was and where I was and who I wanted to be. And in the Chow Hall, the USS Peleliu, or on Red Beach out in Pendleton, just shooting the shit, just waiting to go home. I mean, every single moment we were just, I was lucky to be able to experience all that with you, as well as everybody else that we actually got a chance to be with for that deployment. Especially, I didn't get a chance to do a lot of the combat stuff that everybody got. We did more of humanitarian aid in East Timor and Indonesia in 2010, and Pakistan as well once they got hit with a bunch of flooding. But we trained pretty hard for that deployment. I was not expecting the 15th MEU to be as tough as it was going to be prepared for that, but it was actually good training. God, I wish I could name just one or two other Marines, but honestly, every single Marine that I've ever met has changed my life personally as I was moving through my life. And it's all been for the best. I've been able to learn from private first classes all the way up to first sergeants. And it's incredible how there's this bond that we all are able to maintain after we get out of the service. Bond that I don't have with people that I used to go to high school with. And so training up to that point, we went to LA County Trauma Center for that one. And that one wasn't a lot of fun. But it was during a time where there was a lot of gang activity in LA. And so we had to learn the gunshot wounds and stuff directly from it. And that was something I realized sorry, I'm just seeing this here. But yeah, that was kind of my first step into trauma care. And so it kind of prepared us for a lot of, I guess, emergent activity that we were supposed to face. And it really helped me when I got out, because I actually got into the when I got out of the military, I wanted to go back to college for nursing. I'm actually going to start going back more for journalism and history. I'm a nerd. And so when I went back to my hometown, I was able and prepared to deal with a lot of the emergency medical care that I had to render to a lot of the people that were in my hometown. And it was just a completely different experience. You know, when you're with the Marines, you've got people that you know and that you could care about. And when you work in a civilian hospital, it's completely different environment. And yeah, I really wish I had more fun stories to share with you all, but that's that's really all I can think of at the moment right now, especially following all of those amazing gentlemen. But happy birthday to you guys. Sincerely, Semper Fi. Was a good 250 years, right?
Well, I mean,
So
Doc,
let's do another 250 years on.
well,
Yes, sir.
Rick, Doc, if I may call you that, happy birthday to you. You're a part of that legacy. Don't sell yourself short there. As a doc with a lack of combat experiences, Marine Corps or corpsmen attached to Marine units have played a key role in saving the lives of Marines and putting their lives above Marines in the history and legacy of the Marine Corps since. Plenty of those stories from World War I of dental surgeons putting their life on the line and giving up their lives as sailors to save the Marines around them. So never sell yourself short on that, my friend. Thank you for your service and welcome home.
No, 100%, man. I appreciate you. Thank you. Semper Fi.
All right, it is 4 days after we did this video. Yours truly made a foul up and accidentally left off Ernest J. Barnes, United States Marine Corps, on the email list, and he was kind enough to accept my apology and to come on to this show today for his personal impact with the Marine Corps, the Marine that's impacted him, and the 250th. So, Jesse, it's not Monday. However, happy birthday, my friend. Cheers.
Happy birthday. Cheers, brother.
So, take it away.
Well, I'm Staff Sergeant Ernest Jesse Barnes. I came from a military background. My stepfather served 3 tours in Vietnam in the Navy. My grandfather was a Korean Vietnam War veteran. Another grandfather served in World War II in the Pacific with the Marines. He was also in the Navy. And both of my uncles served. One was a Marine, one was in the Air Force. And a step uncle that was a Vietnam veteran served in the Marines as well. And so that we were always surrounded by military patriotism. It's kind of been a bedrock of our family legacy, I guess you could say. So that's kind of where I decided I wanted to join the military, and I went around to all the recruiters, and I was about to join the Air Force, and I still hadn't talked to the Marine recruiter, and he said when I went to go speak with him, son, if you don't know that you want to be a Marine, get the F out of my office. And that kind of pissed me off. And he said, I don't have time to talk to you right now, because he was with an applicant. Go talk to Gunny. So he sends me to the career recruiter, and buddy, I was just a hook, line, and sinker after that. So from there, that was January 2003. So I joined January 17th, 2003. I was 17 years old, and I shipped to basic training in August of 2003, and I was set to be a combat correspondent. Initially, I wanted to go infantry, but it was the beginning of the war, and they had such a backlog. The recruiter, Sergeant Raven, was like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I like photography. He's like, we got just the job for you, son. So he turned me on to combat correspondent and 4341. And years later, I was trained as a 4301, one of the youngest Marines to be sent through the basic officers course while I was stationed at U.S. Marine Corps Forces South in Miami. So that was a fun little experience. But all in all, I served from August of 2003 until April of 2016. And I did my combat tour in Operation Enduring Freedom. I was with 2nd Marine Division Forward in Afghanistan from March 2011 until February of 2012. Didn't quite make it a year there. We were like a week and a half out. But, with timelines of redeploying, you pretty much get a 3-week window of when you're going to come home. And it just fared out that way. I will say that with a pretty long experience in the Marine Corps, unconventional to leave after 12 years, but I had some stuff going on that I had to take care of. But it did mean that didn't impact me. I will say that the one thing that impacted me greatly about my Marine Corps service is it taught me about resilience and dedication to a community and the drive to be resourceful in any endeavor. My experience has taught me no is not really the answer in most cases, but you have to find a way to accomplish the mission. So that's where the resourcefulness comes in, because sometimes people are just like, well, I gotta know. I guess that's it. It's over. It's not over. Like you find a way. So that's one of the biggest things I took away, and that required me thinking unconventionally and not being afraid of what others thought, because it was just that, unconventional. And along that journey, because of that mindset, like I was impacted by many, many, many Marines throughout my career, and one that really sticks out is Colonel Daniel Huvane, he was a Reserve Marine Corps Public Affairs officer, and I met him at my last duty station when I was with Marine Forces South, and he was the one Marine that taught me to question the narrative, regardless of perceived or threatened consequences. Like, if it's unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional. Like, ask the questions. Don't just blindly, march forward when the balance of U.S. policy is literally in your hands and can be affected by your actions or your inaction. So he gave me a better understanding of what it means to serve the Constitution of our great nation.
I've muted myself. My apologies.
No, you're fine.
Well, first of all, touching on that, a toast to Colonel Houdain. If I said that name correctly, I hope that I did there.
Huvane.
Cheers. Houdain?
Huvane.
Houvain, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm hard of hearing there, but to him, and I hope he sees this out there. Thank you for your service, sir, and welcome home. But it's interesting. Of all the Marines, it is Colonel Houvain. You've got 13 years in the Corps. The amount of people that that you encountered, and what you and I talked about, especially with the legacy that you were reaching out to of interviewing Marines as a PAO that were currently serving, and of course had served in previous wars. That's incredible that Marine stands out to you the most, but it also speaks volumes of what a good officer can do, or not even just for the simple fact of it's the relationship that's established along those lines as well.
You're absolutely right. And I mean, I couldn't be more grateful to know Marines like him and Colonel Armando Daviu. There's Lieutenant, well, actually, she's Major Giles now. She's still an active PAO. And Lieutenant Redding, a bunch of other just great individuals that served with such conviction that you couldn't help but be impacted by their fortitude and their dedication to our great Corps.
Well, and you think about the Corps, and 250 years is the legacy that we're going to be celebrating on Monday. You Marines will be celebrating it. For those of you that have served or are serving, as a civilian, I celebrate it for the history and the legacy that stands on. I think about the uniforms and the artifacts in my collection, and if I'm going to look at years legacy and servitude, I'm probably looking at over 350 years total of Marine Corps history combined. Just what I'm fortunate to have and be able to tell there. The Marines that I've talked to, and so it's always an eye-opening experience when I'm able to encounter Marines that are willing to share their stories and open up about the good, the bad, the ugly, but also how the Marine Corps impacted them in the most positive light to take those lessons that they were able to learn. And that statement you make of that no was not an answer, you make do. That's the Marine Corps. How many islands, operations in Korea, Vietnam, where ammo ran low, bayonets were fixed, Marines had to make do. You'd make do of the situation because that is the Marine Corps. We talked about in the birthday episode that Marines today are standing in the footsteps of Smedley Butler. They're standing in the footsteps of John Basilone. They're standing in the footsteps also, though, of Marines and docs who did their jobs, but perhaps were never decorated for it. But they went above and beyond the call of duty on numerous times, and that citation didn't get put in, or politics got in the way because of a rank. However, at the end of the day, they did their job, not for valor, not to be accoladed, but for those around them, because a Marine or a corpsman meant more to them than anything else in the world.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that's the bedrock of our organization is um, regardless of the meetings in the higher echelons, the back rooms of the Pentagon or the White House, like we don't care about any of that. I care about the guy to my left and to my right, and I think that that is evident throughout like what history remembers of the Marine Corps. So the fact that we get to celebrate 250 years of that is just it's a beautiful milestone, and I look forward to being a part of this for many years to come.
Absolutely. Well, Ernest J. Barnes, professionally, to all Marines, docs out there that will see this and see the larger episode, thank you all for your service. Welcome home to each and every single one of you, and happy birthday. Cheers.
Semper Fidelis.
So our next guest that we would bring on, and gentlemen, after this, I'm going to open up the floor and let you guys talk about other Marines and docs. But I got to start with the two knuckleheads that somehow got us this year, and I'm kind of impressed that this is all came together. But Kevin McCall, this goes back to you and I. Take it away.
All right. Hell yeah. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to our Marines and Corpsmen. Happy belated birthday to our Corpsmen from this past July. And then happy birthday to the Navy from last month. Yeah, just want to throw that out there really quick. Happy birthday to the Marine Corps on the day that this airs. And to follow you, Marines, it's this is going to be difficult. I mean, I don't see myself as anything special, but I did some stuff while I was in, and let's just go with that. So I was a 4641 combat photographer. I joined when I was 17 years old. It was 3 months after 9/11. I was in military school actually. At the time, I went to a military school in Columbia, South Carolina. I watched 9/11 on TV. That was the only time we were allowed to watch TV the entire 6 months of the school. And I watched it happen, and I knew right then and there that I was going to enlist. I just didn't know which branch. I did my research. I talked to the Army. I think they offered me a $50,000 sign-on bonus, and then I talked to the Marine Corps recruiter, and I was like, hey, so the Army's offering me $50,000. What's the Marine Corps going to offer me? He's like, you get to be a Marine. So guess what I did? You can see right here what I did. So, I went to boot camp. I was in a second battalion at Paris Island, and April, that next April after 9/11, I was in the fleet. I went to my MOS school. I graduated from boot camp and I went to my MOS school. Anyway, I was in from January of 2002 until December of 2011. So a total of 10 years. I planned on doing my 20, but I had been wounded on a previous deployment, and I was going through a lot of checkups and whatnot, and then they decided that I needed to go to the Wounded Warrior Battalion and be medically retired. And so that's kind of how I ended my enlistment, with a bang. I mean, it was a really depressing bang, but it was a bang. Anyway, so I did a lot of deployments. I went all over the place for all kinds of exercises. I went to 30 something countries while I was in. My first duty station was in Iwakuni, Japan. My second was at Second Marine Division in Lejeune, and then my third was here, right down the street from where I live now at Camp Pendleton, and I was with the 15th MU. And so I did air, land, and sea. I got the whole Marine Corps experience, if you will. It was pretty unique. I don't think there's many Marines who actually get air, land, and sea. And I'm not really jealous of the guys who missed out on the sea because a MU deployment's not that fun. Just being stuck on a ship wasn't my favorite experience. But I'm going to talk about two of my deployments really quick. The first active, like in theater deployment I did was to Haiti in 2004. I went for Operation Secure Tomorrow. It was when no one's familiar with it, but Aristide, the president, had fled the country because of a civil strife, and we went there to lock it down for the UN to come in. So it was supposedly a humanitarian mission that was going to last 15 days, 4.5 months, and many firefights later, we were still there. And I learned a lot in Haiti. It was a crazy experience. I think the most profound thing I learned while I was there is that every 10 years, America goes to Haiti. We were there in 94. I was there in '04. We were there in 2014. There in 2024. I mean, we just keep going back. We can't help ourselves. It's a really fun place, I guess. My first big desert deployment was in 2005. I got back from Haiti, and a few months later, I was in the field the entire time, and then I went to Iraq on a 14-month tour with RCT-2. Um, First, when I was in Haiti, I was with 3-8. Um, it was MAGTF 8, but I was with 3-8 and second LAR and a few other units that were there. But then when I went to Iraq, I was with RCT-2, which is basically anyone under Second Marines. Mainly 2-2, but there was 3-2. 3-2 was there as well. I served with 325, Second Recon, Fourth Recon. Uh, all of the LARs. I got around as a combat photographer. One of the main differences between my experience and what I've heard about the Vietnam photographers' experience is we didn't have travel orders. I was what we call OFP. I was on my own program. I did whatever, wherever I wanted to go and however I wanted to get there. It was really up to me. So I did a lot of drug deals, getting on convoys, getting on helicopters, just getting to the operations that I needed to get to. And in doing so, I kind of learned the Marine Corps inside and out. I learned so much about all the MOSs. I learned about my fellow Marines and what they value, which is CDs of pictures. I'd just give them CDs of pictures, and then, I'd get on a helicopter. That happened pretty often. And I took advantage of that being OFP, as I said. I didn't have the travel orders restraining me, so if I heard something was going on, I was there. I flew cross country. I'd fly 1,000 miles just to get on operation that I heard was happening. I wasn't even assigned to it necessarily. So a lot of my experience as a in the lower ranks was fairly difficult. Once I picked up a little rank, it got a little bit easier. But as a lot of the gentlemen pointed out, no one really knew what to do with me, and I took advantage of that. I taught them what to do with me. I taught them how to utilize me, how to utilize me in the theater, how to put me forward on operations. I taught them that my job was intelligence, reconnaissance, and historical documentational photography. That's what I did. So I did countless reconnaissance missions, mainly with second LAR and 3-2. And then eventually after Iraq, I deployed a few more times, and I went on a MEU. And I've heard a lot of you Marines talking about, or a lot of you talking about Fifth Marines. I actually deployed with 2-5. I was embedded with Hotel and Golf 2-5 as a photographer when they were the battalion landing team for the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit. So I have deployed. I mean, it's interesting. We're so many years apart, but we've been with the same unit. We have the same spirit. And we did the same job in many instances. I'm really proud of that, especially after hearing every single one of your stories. It I don't know, it chokes me up. I feel like a little more proud of myself following in your footsteps. I also anyway, so what the Marine Corps did for me, it's really interesting. I think a lot of us go through the same experiences, but we take different things away from it. Due to our perspectives, the way we grew up, the things we were taught, the life lessons our parents taught us, just the thing, our perspective really matters. And what we walked away from these wars with really depended on who we were. I've seen it ruin a lot of people. I've lost a lot of friends in war and out of war. After they got out of the Marine Corps, I've lost many friends to the war. Um, just taking their own lives, just having a really rough go at it. And, anyway, I'm going to move on past that. So, what I got out of the Marine Corps is I became a better citizen, to be honest. I learned what the government is, how it works. I learned my position in our government. And I learned how to stand for a cause. And I can't imagine a better cause to stand for than the United States Constitution. I swore an oath to that Constitution, and I care deeply about that Constitution to this day. I hold myself to that oath. There's not a day that goes by where I don't acknowledge it. Um, as far as who my favorite Marine was, I have so many answers to that question. I could list off several Marines I was in combat with. I could list off. I mean, my go-to is Smedley Butler. I love Smedley. The Quaker Marine was a badass, and he taught me a lot about, as I said, being a citizen. He taught me a lot about the Constitution. He taught me perspective on war. He taught me to invest in Halliburton, KBR, Raytheon. He taught me how to think as an American, on top of being a Marine. Furthermore, his speech in 1935 is extremely profound, and it put a lot of perspective on my existence as a Marine. It didn't sway my pride. I don't think anything could possibly do that, especially after hearing every single one of your stories. I don't think I've ever been more proud. But my favorite Marine, or the Marine that impacted me most, I never actually deployed with in a combat theater. I did deploy with them, but it was when I got to my first duty station in Iwakuni, Japan, I had a staff sergeant, and I don't want to say the name because I didn't get permission to talk about them, so I'm just going to say their rank. But staff sergeant taught me to care about my job, taught me to care about like my Marines, taught me how to take care of my Marines, taught me when to take care of my Marines, taught me when to stand up and when to sit down, taught me how to follow. And I think that's the most important lesson you can learn as a Marine, especially once you pick up some rank. If you don't know how to follow, you don't know how to lead. It's just the plain simple truth of it. When I was in Iwakuni, my mother passed away, and I went to my staff sergeant and told them, and they took care of me through and through. I mean, it was like the rank was off. We were human beings, and they took care of me. Several years later, I got to the 15th MEU. This is after my entire stint at division. I did a few deployments while I was there in Camp Lejeune. I ended up at Camp Pendleton in California, at Camp Del Mar, and I was with the 15th MEU. And all of a sudden, I had the same NCO, our staff NCO, but they were a gunnery sergeant at this point in time. Um, as my gunnery sergeant, I was like, they taught me to be self-sufficient more than anything. I had kind of learned how to maneuver the Marine Corps and how to be the best combat photographer I could be while I was at division. But once I got to the MEU, the command element especially is all E6 and above, basically. So anyone, if you're an E5 or below, you're going to have a really rough time of it. You're basically treated as, I don't want to say you're treated as a lance corporal, but there's nobody else to pick for a working party. So if you're a sergeant, you're going on that working party. That's kind of it, plain and simple. They taught me what links to go through to get the job done while taking care of my Marines, while taking care of myself. And they were a boss when they needed to be. They were a Marine when they needed to be, and they were a diplomat when they needed to be. They were family when they needed to be. And that's that's the Marine that changed my life more than anyone. I'm sure if they ever see this video, they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. But I respect that Marine more than anyone else I ever met while I was in the Marine Corps, to include a lot of the Marines I knew in combat. While we did share a bond that is profound and inexplicable in its own way, this person really taught me what it is to be a Marine, what it is to be a citizen, what it is to just be an American. I don't think there was a better lesson that I was taught while I was in the Marine Corps. We learn how to do a lot of destruction, but we don't learn to do a lot of construction. And that Marine taught me construction, how to construct myself, how to construct my life, how to construct everything. And I can't be more grateful. While I never saw combat with that Marine, with my gunny definitely noticed and understood that I had seen extensive combat experiences, and they took care of me. They recognized it, saw my issues, saw that I needed a little bit of attention and certain things before I could deploy numerous more times. And they really took care of me in that sense. More than anyone, I would like to recognize right now, and I hate that, I know I was supposed to talk about one Marine, but Michael Lee, Corporal Michael Lee is one of my great friends. He and I were brothers. He and I served together. We were in the same unit. And after he got out of the Marine Corps, he went home to Oklahoma, and he ended up ending his own life. So I would like to throw my cheers up to
I remember Mike too.
yeah, I'd like to throw my cheers up to Michael Lee. He was a good Marine. He was a good man, and like many others, his experiences in life were cut short due to the hardships and the experiences of the average Marine, on top of him being just separated from other Marines. He didn't have other Marines to talk to where he was. He didn't have, like you gentlemen I'm looking at right now, people who understood our experiences, people who had been there, done that, lost friends, lost parts of themselves. He didn't have anyone to lean on. And I want to take this second here to let you all know, like, hey, call your friends. If you haven't talked to them in a couple months, send them a text, send them an email, call them, just say, hey, I'm thinking about you. That's all you got to say. Hey, I'm thinking about you. Checking in on them. Make sure that they're taking care of themselves the way they should, the way that my gunny taught me to take care of myself. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for that gunny. So all of the depressing stuff aside, I absolutely love the Marine Corps. I wasn't always the best Marine. I got in a lot of trouble. I think Chesty said it best. You're not a real Marine unless you had an NJP, at least one. Well, I got two of them. So I lost some rank, but I gained a lot of rank. I lost some respect, but I gained a lot of respect. I went all around this planet with a rifle in my hand, and and I was a diplomat. I was an American. I was a citizen, but more than any of it, I was always a Marine. I always had the values of the United States Marine Corps at heart. I always had it in the front of my mind. And there, any Marine that served with me, I'd say about half of them would be like, "Oh, that guy's an asshole." They would talk a lot of trash about me, but not a single,
100%.
yeah, not a single one of them is going to say, Kevin McCall was a bad guy. Kevin McCall was unjust. Kevin McCall is a bad American. Kevin McCall was a bad Marine. Not a single one of them can say that. So, Semper Fi, happy birthday to every single one of you, and I appreciate every single one of you being here and talking.
Semper
Kevin.
Fi, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday. Semper Fi, my friend. Welcome home. And to the gunny, to Corporal Lee, to them. And Kevin, you and I have gone back about 2 months, and it has exploded into me talking to more of the Global War on Terror veterans that are willing to talk, and I can never thank you enough for that. But leading on to that, you introduced me to our final Marine to speak before I will then talk about the Marines that impacted me, and that's tough for me. But I'd like to bring in Lou Frill with the shattered voice he has for what he can talk for of the Marine that impacted him the most. I'll keep it simple anymore.
All right, yeah, I'm taking it home, right, with a voice like this. First, I just want to thank all of you for your service. I'm proud to be, family with you all. We're all brothers and sisters in one cause, in one fight. Can you all hear me? Do I need to turn my volume up?
Yeah.
Okay. Just a little backstory of how I lost my voice. I was at Sunday Night Football watching my franchise quarterback dislocate his arm. So that's where the screaming came from. Anyways, my full name is Lucian Friel, Corporal Friel. I was a combat correspondent, 4341. I served 4 years, 2003 to 2007. Served in Iraq in 2005 with 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines. Let's see. I mean, the Marine Corps has impacted me. I mean, it's the one thing in my life that I will always be able to look back on and say I did something, that I had somewhat of an impact, and something that I can show. I don't have any kids, but I can show my nieces and nephews, and future generations of Freels. My nephew's looking to get into the Naval Academy, so showing him, some of those things has been, super rewarding to me. But being in the presence of all of you and all of this history and all of your service, it's super humbling. And I couldn't be more proud to be a Marine today, just like I am every day. But again, thank you all. The Marine who impacted me the most, I mean, there's so many, but I'll go with Major Barry Edwards. This is a guy who he was a Mustang. I met him and knew him as a first lieutenant. But he showed me what it was like to, or the right way to be a leader of Marines. And shortly after meeting him, I got an influx of new Marines, about 12 to be exact, that I was now expected to lead and show the right way, and show them how to embed. As Kevin was talking about being with the regiment, I was fully embedded with 3-2. And so I was directly embedded with the battalion, even though there were times where I had to leave and go cover other units. I was with 3-2 for the majority of the time in 2005 in Iraq. And Barry Edwards, I met before I went to Iraq, and he kind of guided me along that path. And then beyond, and then still to this day has never left my side, always stuck with me and showed me what true loyalty is, and what Marine brotherhood actually is. He's older than me. I don't think he could be my dad, but he's definitely my brother. But anyways, again, Semper Fi. Happy birthday, Marines. 250. Never looked better. So I would say never sound better, but that's where we're going. Maybe we can record this. But anyways, thank you so much. I'm just trying to stick to the Marine ethos, just never a day off. Blown out voice or not. I'm a drill instructor on day 8 before their voices have developed again.
You should have done the drill instructor voice the whole. You throw a knife hand the whole time.
So I'll chime in super fast here. My good friend Doc Norton's got to run, and I'll give him a quick moment. But for those of you looking to read an excellent primary source memoir into a Corpsman's view of Force Recon 1969 and 1970, please look up Doc Norton and his Force Recon diaries. They are phenomenal. Doc Norton.
Thanks, Zach. Thank you.
So, to bring this in, Lou, welcome home. It has been a pleasure to get to know you with Kevin. You two have brought me great joy in seeing the overlap between you and Bernie Berntsen, a Vietnam combat correspondent and combat cameraman. And I'll give Lou a shout out because he didn't do this. Lou actually wrote the Leatherneck Article of the Year for the 2005, if I'm not mistaken, there on the dates. For his article that covered actions of 3-2. And you can find that PDF online. I found it. And Lou also has a copy framed. But it's a just reward in many ways to the legacy of the combat correspondents and cameramen that we have with us. For me, and then I'll open the floor back to you guys. This is tough. I'm not a Marine for any of those of you out there. I've never served. I can't. I have a rare blood disease that keeps my blood from clotting normally, and I am a hazard to any branch of the military. And that was a tough pill to swallow as a kid out of college trying to go into the military. And I decided to do the next best thing, and that was to teach about it. But not to teach about it in some uh, pardon my language, bullshit way. I wanted to be honest. I wanted to be real. I wanted to bring these stories to my classroom that were real by the people that fought that war, by the people that were there through books or through some of you who I've been able to bring into my classroom. And so that opened the door to me being here today. The Marine that has impacted me the most, and Kevin talked about getting emotional earlier, and for me, this is emotional. Um, there are so many Marines that I've met in my journey. World War II, Ray Elliott introduced me to the very first Iwo Jima veteran that I was able to talk to. Walt O'Malley, Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, 27th Marines, who had a profound impact on me. And I was fortunate to call Walt a friend, and his passing uh, really impacted me there. I apologize. I've been able and fortunate to know many Marines through the Vietnam era, and thankfully through Kevin, I've been able to start my introductions through many of you that were Global War on Terror veterans. But the Marine that impacted me the most, that I'll start off with, was the first Marine that I ever interviewed that openly talked about combat PTSD and their struggles to accumulate to life was J.R. Wood, who served with Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 4th Marines in 1967 and 1968. J.R. Wood responded to a Facebook posting that I posted out for any Marine that was willing to tell their story. And he was the first one to be like, I've never told my story, but I would like to. J.R. Wood is from South Carolina. So, Kevin, you've got some overlap there. The Carolina boys sticking together. And he and I started talking about growing up in the Appalachians in the South, from the 40s to my childhood. But J.R. Wood was also the first to tell me what it was like for him to see a best friend of his, and for the time period, his best friend from South Carolina was an African American. They went to boot camp together and they wound up serving in the same company together in Vietnam when he was killed on December 6, 1967, by a friendly fire incident when a 500-pound bomb thrown in by a close air support mission landed too close to friendly lines when their company was in danger of being overrun. And he was killed. And he said, and he told me through tears, and broken English, of how that changed him, of witnessing the death of someone that he had knew from back home, had formed a friendship with, and he was a Marine regardless of his race, and how his death was in many ways so futile because it was at friendly hands and not at the enemy's. And then J.R. Wood went on to tell me his struggles of coming home after the Vietnam War and struggling as a American veteran, not respected by his country. Many of you Vietnam veterans, Dan and I have talked about this, have talked about the overall feel of Vietnam after the war in the late 70s and early 80s before the wall started to heal this nation. And about his struggles and how no one had ever bothered to ask him what it was like to be a Marine, but how the Marine Corps had impacted him. J.R. Wood then, after me being able to interview him for 7 or 8 hours, invited me to the very first Marine Corps reunion I was ever able to go to. He invited me to go to Marion, North Carolina, which is about a 2 hour trip up the road for me to the west, where Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 4th Marines, Vietnam veterans all meet once a year, Labor Day weekend, in the hills and mountains of North Carolina. Harold Wilson, he won't kill me for this, inspirational Marine and one of the greatest friends I've ever met in my entire life, host this reunion where at times and in the past, over 100 Marines of Charlie Company from 1965 to 1970 have gathered to meet to celebrate their legacy as Charlie 1-4. For those of you that have ever read the excellent historical fiction novel Matterhorn, written by Carl Marlantes was a platoon leader and eventually the executive officer for Charlie 1-4 in 1969 for Operation Purple Martin, in the fights for Hill 400 and 484. And I'm able to call many of those Marines and Corpsmen my friends who have sat down with a random American from Western North Carolina, that's a high school history teacher, and have been willing to tell me the worst days of their lives in the Marines or as a corpsman, but also the best days of their lives with the Marines and corpsmen they fought with. And so to J.R. Wood, you opened that door. You inspired me to reach out, not to just Marines of the Vietnam generation, but to Marines of World War II, Marines of the current generation of Iraq and Afghanistan. And without you, JR, I don't know if I would be doing this today and sitting here with previously the 9 veterans I was fortunate enough to bring on and call you all my friends or associates. So without further ado, to JR Wood and to all of you today, thank you for being here. You all mean the world to me. Cheers.
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 And happy birthday to each and every single one of you out there. Before I turn the floor loose and let our elders, Dan and Ray, talk about any other Marines that have impacted them, for those of you that don't have anything to do on the birthdays from here on out, I will happily host virtual reunions for Marines to come on a Zoom call to celebrate with other Marines or docs. If you cannot go out to Ton Tavern, if you cannot go out to any kind of reunion or to your local VFW, I will happily host a virtual meeting for Marines and corpsmen everywhere to give you a place as a welcome home. Thank you all.
I'll be at every single one. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Can I add one thing?
Please, Lou, come on in.
With my terrible voice, and then I promise I'll leave you all alone. But I, it really struck me with what you talked about, Kevin, and now Zach, about the suicide rate of veterans, and it's just so interesting that this morning I found out that a good friend of mine who I helped train go to Iraq checked himself into the VA hospital because he was having suicidal thoughts. Obviously, I won't mention his name, but I just want to tell him, if he ever watches this, that I'm proud of you, brother, and I want everyone to know that's the way to do it. If you are having just those terrible thoughts, call a brother,
Yeah.
call a sister. We're here. We're all here. We want you at every birthday that we can possibly have you at.
100%.
We want to celebrate every single one of these together. And it's not the same without you, and it won't be the same without you. And you matter, and we love you. And whatever you got to do to keep that, get to the next birthday, and then the next birthday, and then the next birthday. So happy birthday, Marines. And again,
Amen to that.
thank you so much.
I'd like to say something about Sergeant Masters,
Go ahead, Ray, bring it in.
the drill instructor. I was a squad leader in boot camp, and right before we graduated, or ready to graduate, we were pretty salty at the time, and we were in the squad bay over lunch. I mean, in the it was huts that we were in, and some of the guys wanted to match quarters. And I was a squad leader. I was in charge, and I didn't say no. And they started matching, and they started hollering when they won. And these Quonset huts had a little chain or a little hook on the back door, and they were hollering and back and forth and winning quarters and giving quarters. And all of a sudden, that door opened, and there was Sergeant Masters, and he took us all down to the officers. Walked in, and I went in first. And he told the lieutenant, he said, told him what was going on. He said, I would like to keep this man, but he said, I can't do it because he was the one in charge. And we all got set back for a week. But I learned more in that situation about life, I think, than I've ever learned in my life, because I was just ready to graduate. If you know anything about boot camp, when graduation comes, you're about as happy as you can ever be. But I've always kept that in my mind as I've gone through the rest of life. And I don't think I would have had as much respect for him had he not set me back as well. I wasn't flipping quarters, but I was in charge.
To Sergeant Masters. Doing the right thing. Absolutely.
Sergeant Masters, indeed. Ray, like I mentioned earlier, took me under his wing. But for those of you that like reading historical fiction through a unique lens, Ray wrote an excellent book, Iwo Blasted Again, which I would recommend to anyone out there looking for a unique, interesting view into Iwo Jima, but through Sundowner Syndrome, if I got that correct, Ray. You can correct me on that, of how the events older in life come back in a very haunting, very vivid way.
That sounds terrifying.
Well, the thing about that book is based basically on the people that I went to Iwo Jima with, and they were in, I said a while ago, E227 instead of E228, and these guys were in E227, and they were super people.
Yes, they were.
And
I was.
the thing about that book is I wanted to mention my daughter. I've got a younger daughter that's working her master's in theater at the University of Illinois, and she came to me and asked me if I cared if she wrote a play script as her master's project of Iwo Blasted Again, and we're hoping that it'll be produced here through the University of Illinois theater department. I don't know; it hasn't been accepted yet for that purpose, but she's graduating this semester and thinks it will be. But I agree. One of the interesting stories in there, you know how Marines never rat on each other. The Alpagawaga was a Spanish Basque from Idaho, and his buddy that wrote the poem that's in there about that both of them were wounded. Al lost his leg and was in there getting had a little bit more taken off of it. And Bill came in there and he'd been wounded in the shoulder and the arm, and he came walking in the squad there in the hospital and asked Al, what can I do for you? And they said, bring me a fifth of whiskey, because these guys just got back from Iwo Jima and hadn't been anything to drink. And so Bill went out and got the fifth whiskey and brought it back. And these guys, both of them drank it, and they were pretty well oiled up when they got caught. And they kept asking them where they got the fifth of whiskey. Well, nobody was going to say it was Bill that brought it in. And finally, they even talking about giving them office hours or a court martial. And finally, Al said, I don't know. Said, I woke up in the middle of the night and said there was something hard under my pillow. Said, I think maybe it was the tooth fairy that brought that in there. And but they never would rat on Bill.
That's a good Marine right there.
Have to note something for the pain.
Ray mentions these E227 Marines, and I was only fortunate enough to know one of them. And I mentioned him earlier as Walt O'Malley, who had a profound impact on my life. And actually, this uniform here, this 4-screen Alpha, belonged to a Marine, Clyde Seitz, who was with Fox 227, battling in the flank of the Marines of Easy Company. However, I'll never forget the first time I called Walt, this Easy Company Marine. And he answers the phone, and we had I told him what I was about, and he goes, "So what the hell do you want to know?" And that's always just stuck with me. And he followed that with, "What the hell do you want to know, kid?" And that just kind of always stuck with me, because Ray, Walt, and that's Walt. And I was blessed to interview him and talk about his experiences. But 227 has always stood out to me when it comes to the Second World War. The 5th Marine Division only saw one combat for the war, and that was Iwo Jima, with the 3 regiments that were brought together of boots fresh out of MCRD, or whether it would have been Parris Island, but also Marine Raiders and Paramarines who had nowhere to go because of the disbandment that took place in February of 1944. And it is this incredibly odd, unique, and peculiar group of Marines that formed, in my opinion, the best fighting force of Marines that fought on the Second World War on the island of Iwo Jima. But without further ado, in my nerdy history rants, Dan Moore, you had a second Marine that you would like to talk about. And Dan, you've been sitting here way too long while I've been rambling. So Dan, come on in.
That's okay. I would like to remember my oldest friend who passed away a year ago, Lieutenant Colonel retired Robert Muir, Bob Muir.
Oh, I
We were
know
the
Bob.
best.
Bob was
You
a good
do?
friend of mine.
Outstanding. Well, you'll understand this. We were the best of friends for 70 years. We met at Hunters Point, San Francisco Naval Shipyard in 1954, where our fathers were stationed. In the officers' quarters at the top of the hill on base, our families lived just 2 houses apart. I remember joint family weekend cookouts and trips to the Navy pool at Treasure Island. There was no end to the mischief we created. I was 10, Bob was 11. All good times. As Bob noted during a call a couple of months before he passed away, at Hunters Point, we shared the last years of our childhood, and friends we remained. Bob's parents, Ruthie and Freddie, and mine, JD and Polly, also remained close friends throughout their lives. Both couples married as World War II began. They were the greatest generation. Friendships develop through mutual trust and respect and like interests. At Hunters Point, Bob and I were inspired by Marines at the barracks who went out of their way to befriend us. Bob and I would often visit one of them when he was on guard duty. And on occasion, he took us to a San Francisco Seals baseball game. These Marines undoubtedly influenced Bob's and my decision to join the Marine Corps. Bob's son, Kevin, has actually and accurately described his dad as Captain America, a man with a strong moral compass, leadership skills, dedication to protecting the vulnerable. He was indeed that, tough in every respect with a heart of gold, a hero and a role model, proud of his family. Bob had great integrity, honesty, and character. Unflappable, generous with his time as a volunteer with Navy Aid, Bob assisted and advised young enlisted Marines on their finances. Level-headed, he always seemed to do the right thing. When he offered an opinion during our conversations, I always listened closely. During his illness, we kept in close touch on the phone. Bob was a great storyteller. He also enjoyed hearing a good yarn. We often traded stories of the past, some repeatedly, especially the humorous ones. We seemed to find some humor in just about everything we discussed. Bob never failed to respond with an astonished, "Is that right?" when I told him something he had possibly not heard before. Yes, we were family, we were brothers. Near the end, he told me calmly that he was tired and getting ready to check out. He added with characteristic amusement that he would text me when he crossed over to let me know if the streets of heaven really were guarded by United States Marines, as alleged in the Marines hymn. I'm waiting to get that text. Anytime, Bob. Semper Fi.
That's not the
Hi,
same
Bob.
Bob. That's not the same Bob Mueller. I knew it. He was an Iwo Jima veteran when I knew.
Okay. You would have liked him.
It
Semper
sounds a lot like Bob Mueller though.
Dan, that was very poignant and beautiful in many ways of the humor of the Marines that I'm fortunate to know and call my friends of I'll let you know if the streets are truly guarded by United States Marines. And I believe that if, there is an afterlife of all the branches out there, no disrespect to any other, I would like to think that it is guarded by the Marines and Corpsmen of the United States Armed Forces that have been there, those that did not come home and those that did, and the demons that they've battled since.
Yeah. Thank you, Zach.
It's absolutely guarded by United States Marines, and we're up there whistling at the women walking by. We're telling dirty jokes. we're up there just being Marines.
100%.
I'll say for Doc Rick though, y'all are right there with us in formation.
Semper Fi.
Have to be a no to the Corpsmen. I actually just got a doc uniform in the other day from a friend of mine. That's a story for later in my nerdy history rants. But I'll turn it over to Doc Rick. Doc Rick, in our time here, is there another perhaps Corpsman or Marine that you would like to talk about in our time here?
Yeah. Man. My old chief, he was this just jacked Samoan guy. His name was Chief Telemalu, or Chief T. But I knew him as a first class, and he was just a fantastic person. Honestly, a lot of the things that I've come to actually recognize is that, like, every single second that you're with Marines, you're going to remember even the dumbest, smallest things, either like on the smoke deck or just walking around and stuff like that. I could tell you a lot of good memories and some ports. You want to get into some fun trouble, hang out with Marines. I'll tell you what.
That could be a later episode.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting in trouble with Marines. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I found when we were in Darwin, Australia. I remember walking back to the ship because it was just about to be, the Liberty was just about to be cut off for the night. And one of the Marines was actually locked up in like one of it. I don't want to say it was like an animal control vehicle, but I guess that's all they had to put him in. Yeah. Like, you guys get into the weirdest predicaments. I swear to God, I love it. Best trouble in the world.
It's funny you say that, Doc Rick. As a civilian and the reunions I've been to, even still with Marines in their 60s at least, there has been a fair amount of trouble that I've been able to witness to, and debauchery, which will not be said on this episode. But still, though, it's Marines. What do you expect 18 and 19-year-olds to do, 20 and 21-year-olds, and then flash forward 40 years later, 50 years later, and when they get together, they're still Marines. And I told this to some students of mine that have been interviewing me, oddly enough, about what I do, and I said, you'll never understand the impact it has on me of asking Marines and corpsmen about their experiences and watching guys with beards, guys with facial hair, guys with long hair, and seeing a twinkle in their eye. And I'm no longer talking to guys in their 40s, guys in their 60s, 70s, or 80s. I'm talking to 19-year-old kids again, whether it's in the rice paddies of Vietnam, whether it's on the black sands of Iwo Jima, or whether it's in the streets of some street in Iraq going on a patrol. And that's what I see when I interview Marines and docs. And that is the change that it has on me. Kevin and Lou, another Marine or doc that you guys would like to possibly honor today, and then we'll turn it over to me and take this one home.
I'll just point out real quick that, this entire time, all I've been listening to is a bunch of 19, 25-year-olds, talking about their experiences. That's all I hear. I don't hear anything else. Well, like I said, I enlisted at 17 years old, and I retired at I think I was 28. I just turned 28. And that's who we are. That's I don't want to say we peak at that time, because we don't. A lot of us have very fulfilling lives afterward. But
yeah, I don't know. I'm still pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm not that cool. I look back on it, and these were these were the years of my life. These were the wonder years, if you will. In that I will always look back on this with fondness. I've had a lot of hardship throughout my life. I think everyone has, but when I look back on the Marine Corps, I don't think about the hardship. I don't think about getting NJP twice. I think about my friends. I think about my fellow Marines. I think about the love that we shared for each other, the way we kept took care of each other, and the way we looked out for each other, mentally, physically. Just we protected each other. We were always there for each other, no matter your race, your ethnicity, even your creed, your nationality. I served with Marines from all over the world, from Colombia to Somalia. I mean, there were Marines doing the service to citizenship path. And I served with a lot of them. I served with Marines of every religion, every single
Some of the
creed.
most honorable pathway right there.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, it truly is, in my opinion. But I serve with a lot of different types of people, and all I hear when I talk to any single one of them is a 19 to 25-year-old talking shit about life. We all have the same sense of humor. As different as we all are, as politically different as we all are, we're all the same. We're all the same in that we have faced our mortality and we faced it like Marines. Whether you're a Navy corpsman who was FMF or you're a United States Marine, we all looked at it the same way. We all looked death in the eye and laughed our asses off, and moved forward. Zach, I
True
need to.
story, by the way. Kevin, you taught my 19-year-old ass how to change oil in my old. You remember the Sunfire? That old Pontiac Sunfire?
Yeah, I remember
You're
that
the
way
first
back in the
person
day.
to
Yeah,
teach
yeah.
me to show me that shit ain't going anywhere. Drink.
Well, the person I want to point out right now, like I was saying, is Zach. You sell yourself short a lot. And you talk about how you're not this, you're not that, man. But every single one of, I'm not going to say every single one because a lot of these guys are published authors to even owning their own publishing company. But my story, I'll say my story would have died with me if it weren't for you. I can't say how many other Marines whose stories would have just died with them because they didn't think it was important. I didn't think my story was important. We've done 7 episodes now and of interviews. It's 7. And every one's an hour or more, and it's incredible that I have shit to talk about at this point, because it's really meaningful that you are keeping this going. People like you are invaluable
I'm on
to
my
the Marine
phone
Corps.
right now,
You
quite
know,
a lot.
no, the Marine Corps would be nothing without our history. Well, in boot camp, every single one of us learns the Marine Corps history. And, I don't give a shit when you went to boot camp. You learn Marine Corps history. You learn the
Exactly.
travesties. You learn the good and the bad. You learned what to learn from, and they teach us these lessons so that we don't
Get
make.
that annual reading list from the Commandant.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I learned about Smedley Butler was, the Commandant's reading list. We
Educators
need
are
we need to keep this
heroes
information
in this
passing
country, I
on.
swear to God.
We need to keep passing this on. We need to keep the story and the narrative going so people don't think that we're just a bunch of the cliche idea of what civilians think of Marines is a bunch of robots who just follow orders and nothing else. We're not that whatsoever. We're brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, mothers, fathers, children. That's who we are. We are American citizens. We are Americans, just as every single person who might watch this video. I mean, we're all the same, and we just saw a little more crap. Um, I'll point out also, I just want to say thank you, Zach, for what you're doing. You're the person I wanted to point out for my second person. I will also point out that you know what? I'll leave it at that. Go ahead, Luke.
Lou, if you've got anybody, I know your voice is a little tough, but bring it in, brother.
Hey, I'll push through. No, I mean I have so many. I would say that, and I don't want to start naming people, but anybody that was a part of 3-2 in between January and of 05 and January of 06. I mean, thank you for taking me in. Thank you for allowing me to tell your story. I wouldn't have had any of the accolades or anything that I did without you. One of the Marines that impacted me also the most is a Marine that I trained who ended up doing just as well, if not better than I did when he went with a 1-1 just a year later after me. And I'm proud of his time than I am of mine because for me it was sort of, yes, the passing of the torch, but just the the training that I gave him mattered. And that's Bryce Muhlenberg. You know, I'm always proud of that kid. Went to his wedding down in South Carolina last year, and he's about to have a kid. So I mean, you know, the Marine Corps, it's not a cliche when they say the Marine Corps is family. We really are, and it goes across generations. It goes across service lines. It goes across conflicts, and we're all sitting here proof of it. Semper Fi.
I can't follow that up any better. Before I bring in the last two Marines I would like to honor, which is really tough for me, would any of you else like to bring in another Marine or Doc to talk about as we end this one out? And might keep this in mind. This is something that's going to be happening next year, and as long as I'm alive, I'm going to keep doing these virtual views. But anybody else, another Marine or Doc?
I think you know more Marines than I do, Zach.
I wouldn't go that far.
That's all those future Marines who are looking into boot camp and thinking maybe I don't have it in me.
Well, you know, Rick, it's funny you say
How about
that.
some advice for them?
Lou brought that in, and after I talk about these last two Marines, that's how we're going to end before we do the Marine Corps hymn. Is the advice you would give to new generation of Marines? And I think it's important. I've taught kids who, because I brought a Marine in to talk to my students, whether that be good or bad, they're like, "Hey, Mr. Wood, I'm joining the Marine Corps." I'm like, "Great. I've never been there. I've talked to guys, but good luck." And I give them a thumbs up, and then they reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, this sucked." But I'm like, "Yeah, but you earned it." You know, it's funny.
Yeah.
But there's a Marine that couldn't be here tonight, one of the last two I'm going to honor, who has had such a profound impact on my life. He is on my YouTube channel. He is a Marine that I call a good friend of mine. He decided to give me chunks of his life. Maps he carried in Vietnam as a forward observer, and I was very blessed to introduce this individual to Dan Moore. Dan Moore was able to meet this Marine for the first time that he's ever been to the Vietnam Wall. And Dan and I met at the wall, and it was really funny. I know I'm ranting, but I was looking for a name. I had a map in my hand, and I happened to see Dan, and I had a suspicion Dan was a Vietnam veteran. And I was like, I want to talk to this guy. And I showed this map, and I said, Dan, I'm looking for Paul Bertolozzi. And Dan stopped in his tracks, and he said, how do you know that name? And Dan and I started talking, and I told him the story of my friend Mike Harris. And Dan also knew Paul Bertolozzi of his time in country. And Dan was able and fortunate and kind enough to hold this map that my friend Mike Harris carried in Vietnam. And of his time in Vietnam, Mike labeled this map of officers that were killed in action that he knew that had a profound impact on his life. And so I met Mike through a Facebook post. Once again, I've met a lot of the veterans I've been able to talk to through Facebook. And Mike had never told his story before. And he said, a lot of people have asked me to tell my story. Why should I tell it to you? And that was hard for me. You know, I'm a civilian. I'm a historian with a passion. So I talked to Mike, and he said, I trust you with my story. And Mike has only ever told his story to me. Even today, people will reach out to Mike for interviews, and he said, I've only told my story to one man, and that is you, Zach Wood. And I apologize for the tears that are going to flow through this. I'm really sorry. I try not to get emotional, but
Don't apologize,
I'm a
man.
baby. But Mike gifted me his diary that he wrote.
Mm.
And in his diary, in his dedication, he dedicated this to me for keeping his legacy alive. But I interviewed for Mike for over 15 hours about his service as a forward observer with 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines in 1966 to 1968, of his time in Vietnam. And I published all of our interviews, and Mike wrote me a letter that I've never read before to anyone. And I'm going to read that now and try to get through it. So please, once again, I apologize for the tears that have come for the next two. But the letter says, Zach, my wife Bonnie and I want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a happy and prosperous New Year. I personally want to thank you for listening and video recording my Vietnam experience. Never did I ever think so many people would view it. Though it has been difficult at times to relive and remember so much honor and death and horror, I always remember my promise to those Marines and Corpsmen that I would never let them be forgotten. You have made that promise to them possible. I got many responses to the interviews from both family and friends. The one that stood out the most was, Mike, I didn't know. One individual who I went to school with from 2nd grade through high school and who said she would never speak with me again wrote me and said she was so very sorry for calling me a baby killer. That's because of the interviews. I'm sorry, y'all. I just want you to know what your interviews have accomplished. This girl has not spoken to me since 2nd grade. I went to Vietnam in 1967. At 5 class reunion, she sneered at me. Now, because of you, we are friends again due to the fact my story was told. Thank you for what you have done to help me and others to heal. God bless my friend, Mike Harris. Thumper.
Real quick, Zach, I'm gonna say, I couldn't have said it better. That is exactly the point I made a moment ago. Um, you are giving us a voice. You are recording this. You are documenting this, and you as a historian, I mean, this is, I think this is what you live for. I mean,
Hell yeah.
I appreciate it, man. I honestly, I love you for this. This is amazing. You told me once I was one of the first LYF vets to really open up to
You
you.
were.
There's a reason. I saw your other videos and I saw these gentlemen that came before me and in more ways than one. And I see the emotion you have right now, man. It's genuine, and I think it's important. I wouldn't share my story with anyone else. It wouldn't have got out there otherwise. And I mean, I thank God for you, man. I really do.
Thank you.
Be remiss without saying cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, Lou.
That's
Go ahead, Ray.
Zach. That's one of the things that I edited the 5th Marine Division publication Spearhead News for about 15 years, and it's on my website talespress.com. All the ones that I issued, and I told stories about what the people told me. I wrote columns. I had other people write, and I think basically a lot of those guys never talked about anything until they were 60, 65, 70 years old. And they started these reunions that you've attended. They started talking about those things to other people besides they would always talk to one another, but they wouldn't talk to anybody else. And I think that's one of the highlights of my life is meeting those people. And I spent a lot of time with Walt O'Malley and Al Pagawaga and Bill Madden and those guys with E-227. And one of the top things that ever happened to me, I was sitting with him at lunch in Washington, D.C. at a reunion there for Iwo Jima Association of America. And one of them said to me, he said, you're one of us. And I said, no, I'm not one of you. I could never be one of you. And they said, well, you are. We love you. And that basically, I don't have tears now, but I did then.
Yeah, I've heard the same from the Vietnam guys. When I came home from Iraq, I mean, obviously it wasn't the same situation, but it was under a similar situation. Yeah, I mean, we weren't popular at the time. What kept me from being spit on and called a baby killer was you guys. You made sure to frame everything for us. Whether you thought you were talking or not, you absolutely were. You saved us from that same fate, so to speak.
It'll never happen again.
Yeah, as long as we pass it on, it will never happen again.
It's
And as long as we're not in a war as futile as the Vietnam War was,
Yeah.
where we lost more than 58,000 men, a generation. What could they have contributed?
Amen. And I think about that, Dan. I think about what your remarks, Kevin, Ray, Lou. Thank you guys. I can't. I've never served. I've never claimed to serve, but I'm so thankful for those of you that are willing to tell your story. And it is emotional to me. I do care, and it's hard to express that sometimes. Um, I think about that every time I go to the wall with Dan, and I was telling Dan this when Dan and I met for the first time last November, almost a year ago to the date. Every time I go back to the wall, I know a new story, a new name on that wall, and their legacy because of the people that are willing to tell me their stories. And I try to pass that on to my students, to people in passing. And I think it's a legacy that does need to be told. I tell my students, you do not have to support the administration. You don't have to support the war. Support the veteran. Um, the veteran was oftentimes a poor individual from America, or someone that was patriotic, that believed in the cause that they were doing, and they went and fought and bled, not for me, not for the flag, but for those around them, those that were pulling the trigger along beside them, those that were bandaging and trying to save the lives of those in the streets, those that were recording the stories or photographing those in the combat actions, because that is your job, and you did that for those around you, and I can never thank you enough. The last Marine I want to talk about, before I turn this loose to our last question, is this uniform. This is a unique uniform. It's a M41 jacket, worn by a paramarine that never got to tell his story. This man is named Frank Hollick. Frank Hollick was a 20-year-old Marine when he lost his life on the island of Iwo Jima on March 3rd, 1945. Frank did not see combat before Iwo, but found himself assigned to Dog Company, 2nd Battalion, 26th Marine Regiment, in June of 1944 after completing Paramarine School with the 4th Parachute Battalion. And Frank went to the island of Iwo Jima as a rifleman. He was there on the first day of combat when the 26 Marines were called in about lunchtime, due to the atrocious fighting that was already taking place after the Japanese plan by General Kobayashi. And Frank would be wounded on the 25th of February, 2 days after the flag raising, which of course Ray has talked about with then Captain Severance. And he would be wounded with shrapnel to the face. And I think about Frank a lot, on Memorial Day, on the Marine Corps birthday, because Frank could have stayed on the hospital ship that he was sent to have the shrapnel picked out of his face, but he chose not to. Frank, like many of the Marines that came before him and many of the docs that came before him, elected to go back to his Marines, and to those that served with him. And in an assault on Hill 362, on 3rd March 1945, Frank Hollick would be killed in action, while charging a machine gun position, and was shot in the face and the chest several times. And those were his final actions of picking up his rifle, and charging what many had done before him. And Frank's story was never told, until I was fortunate to be able to purchase his M41 that someone offered me. The items behind you, I purchased. I'm not one of those people that just sell artifacts because they're valuable. I buy them to tell the story. Frank was a 20-year-old kid who never got to tell his story. He is buried in the San Francisco cemetery for, I can't think of the name of it right now. I can even show you where his grave is in San Francisco, where he was buried with full military honors. But his story has been silenced until 1945 until now. And Frank was like, as many of you could probably think of, a Marine who has given their life for others, or a Marine who did their job and was killed in action. Fate, perhaps a God deciding that, or just unfortunate circumstances. But Frank is the stereotypical Marine. He's got the chiseled jaw with his photograph. He's smiling, he's young, he's fit. He is the stereotypical poster, yet he never got to tell his tale. And I talk about Frank in my class. I talk about Frank now because Frank is like thousands of others, Marines and docs, who signed a dotted line, who, as Kevin said, swore an oath to the Constitution, yet they did not come home. They came home in a box. And their story also needs to be remembered and honored on the Marine Corps birthday for the Marines, Navy Corpsmen, the Navy chaplain that have sacrificed their lives for those around them, the friends that they fought with, so that they might live. A toast to each and every single one of them that cannot be with us on the 250th.
Semper Fi to every single one of them.
So to end us out,
Absolutely.
and I can't thank you guys enough, Lou, in his broken voice, had a great question to end us out for today. So I'll start with Ray, and then go to Dan, and then pass it off to you GWAT veterans. What advice would you give to this current generation of Marines, either currently with line companies or going through boot camp?
That's a good question. Somebody said that they didn't join the Marine Corps because of the Crucible. The Crucible wasn't there when I was there, but I think that is something that if anybody can get through that, they can do anything in the world. I've been there and watched the Marines, the boot camp people go through there, but you've got to have honor and dignity and truth and everything else, and you learn that in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps I was in anyway, we did, and that would be my advice to a lot of people. If you have problems, and I've told my students that as well. If you want to find out what you're made of, join the Marine Corps.
My advice would be stay out of politics when you're on active duty, and remember your oath. Remember your oath to the Constitution.
Absolutely. I would say the same, remembering your oath to the Constitution, but more than anything, I want to call them boots first and foremost.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and rag them a little bit, but hey, once you get through boot camp, you're part of the brotherhood. You're one of us. Whether you deploy, whether you're during your enlistment, anything happens in the world, you're one of us. It doesn't matter. I don't consider myself better than anyone because of my little stupid stack back here. That's just a bunch of pieces of cloth wrapped around metal. It means absolutely nothing. The oath to the Constitution and the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, that's what means something. You're part of a brotherhood, and furthermore, I'm not going to say you're better than the average citizen, but you're more obligated than the average citizen. I'll say that absolutely. You are obligated to support and defend this Constitution of the United States of America against any enemies, foreign and domestic. That is what our purpose is. It's not to sit up in the riggings and shoot people while we're boarding each other's ships. That's a couple hundred years ago. We're not there anymore. In this modern
At least
day,
not during the weekdays.
Yeah. We do that every now and then, but in this modern day and age, we are servants to the people in the sense that we are servant soldiers. I'm using that word very daringly right now, but we are servant soldiers. We have sworn an oath to the Constitution, and we have discipline. We have a purpose, and we have an oath that we need to fulfill to the United States people, the citizens of this great nation that we live in. And as I've said in our other videos, the Constitution is meant to be changed. That's what amendment means. But supporting it as it is until it's been changed is necessary. We are not only protecting the United States of America, we are protecting the rights and protections of the United States citizens against anyone, including our own government. That is our purpose, and that is our oath, and fulfilling that oath is our entire purpose. So, talking in circles at this point, but it means a lot. I would tell them that while they are boots, they are us. They're the next generation, and I'm never going to be a Marine again. They're it. They're the ones, they are the bishops of this generation. Pass it on. Learn from us, just like I learned from these gentlemen that are speaking right now. I learned infinite information from Vietnam veterans, from Desert Storm veterans, from guys who fought in Kosovo. Any one of my predecessors, I've learned from every single one of them. And don't close yourself to the information that our seniors have to feed us, because it's invaluable, as an American citizen and as a United States Marine.
Amen.
I did a book signing at MCRD, 2 book signings about a month ago, and they had the recruits graduating class come in to the book signing, and those Marine recruits they had just graduated, and it made me go back about 60 years, because there was no difference in them. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. And if you want to read about the Iwo Jima, go on my website, talespress.com, and all the spearheads that I edited are on there, and a lot of stories about Iwo Jima veterans and what happened there. So, and that's another thing that I would recommend that they do is read.
Mhm.
General Mattis
Read.
General Mattis had a list, I know, and a lot of you have seen the list that other people have had, and that's one of the things that I would really recommend that they do is to read.
Absolutely. Several of those books on General Mattis's list exactly are right here on this bookshelf.
Yep.
I support exactly what you're saying right now, and I'll double down on it. Yeah, absolutely read. There's a lot of information out there that will be lost. If you're not reading all of these accounts, they're there. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you read it?
Amen. Doc, Rick, Lou?
Rick, if you want to go first, I'll warm up the voice.
I wish I could say anything that was better than what's already been said. I guess just never be flexible, be fluid, because flexibility can still break. But if you're fluid, you can move around every object that comes ahead of you. And the United States Marine Corps, the United States Navy, they will treat you and teach you those skills. But you got to be open to it as well. So adapt and overcome, right, gentlemen?
Absolutely.
Rick, I'm taking that with me because I always said Semper Gumby. I think we've heard that before. But now, I mean, I remember having like a little Gumby figure that I could break. So maybe we say like Semper Aqua Man or something like that.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, Bruce Lee had this like, don't be water, my friend.
Right, be water, so Semper Water.
There you go.
Or whatever water is in Latin. But I would say utilize your resources when you're in and when you're getting out. That goes for all the Marine veterans out there.
100% when you're getting out.
You got a lot of resources out there for you. If you're not getting the disability that you think that you should be getting, reach out to a veteran service organization, whether that's the VFW, whether that's American Legion, or just the VA, or if you have a state veteran organization that can help you get the benefits that you've earned, because you have earned them. You're not double dipping. If anybody's double dipping at some of these defense contractors, if I'm just going to throw that out there, you can cut that out if you want.
Cough, Halliburton, cough.
Everyone I own stock in.
Hey, yeah, don't do that. Don't talk about all that.
You can cut that out if you don't want me assassinated tomorrow. I don't know. But anyways, just, always utilize the resources when you're in. There are plenty of resources. If something happens to you that you know is wrong, that you know is not right, reach out, talk to your command. If the command doesn't do it, then reach out to the other resources that are available to you. And I'm talking about everything under the sun. If something happened to you that you feel is wrong, reach out. Find somebody that's going to get something done, because somebody is always there for you. And then I would also just say, just stay motivated through everything. There's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times, but that's life. And you're a Marine, and you got through the crucible, like Ray said. You get through the crucible, you can get through anything. You get through the Marine Corps, you can get through anything. We are the strongest people, not just in this country, but on the planet. And I believe that. There is nothing that can stop a ready to go gung ho Marine. And
Best
with my
piece of
broken
advice I
ass
ever heard
voice,
from a gunnery sergeant was don't sweat the petty stuff.
yeah,
Pet the sweaty stuff.
exactly.
I'd like to
And
read
I'll also just
something.
add this last little bit. If you're ever going to be on a podcast, don't go to a football game and blow out your voice.
I'd like to read something here, Zach, that I've
Go
done
ahead, Ray.
on my Facebook. It's attributed to Robert Kennedy. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I like what it says. Is every time we turn our heads the other way when we see the law flouted, when we tolerate what we know to be wrong, when we close our eyes and ears to the corrupt because we are too busy or too frightened, when we fail to speak out, we strike a blow against freedom, decency, and justice.
Amen.
Correct.
What
Very
did
well
General
said.
Milley just say about serving an oath to a constitution and not a person?
Yeah.
Not an individual, but the document that binds us all together.
Amen.
Amen to that. I just taught that to my students in many ways today, of what that means to us as the American people, not just from the civilian standpoint. For the 5 of you still here, you all swore an oath to the Constitution from the standpoint of a veteran willing to sacrifice your life if need be for a cause greater than the United States of America, depending on how that is viewed. From the civilian standpoint, the advice that I would give to new Marines or current generation Marines, and some of you can be like, whoa, 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 guy didn't serve. However, my advice would be to watch interviews of those that came before you, not just though their time in combat, but their time as a Marine or their time as a doc, the struggles that they had to face, perhaps with bad leadership, whether that be NCOs or officers that were in their midst, but also the good that was there to be found. But also educate yourself in the legacy you stand on. Many of you Marines are going to stand in the shoes of Dan Daly, Smedley Butler, John Basilone, or Corpsman, George Whalen, where you will have to physically and at some points perhaps risk something that is beyond your life, but also understand that this legacy goes back to 1775, when the possibility of a new nation emerged, and it was perhaps doubtful if it would come out as a new nation or under the rule of British control. And here we are in 2025, celebrating the history of 250 years of people who are not afraid to take a stand for what they believed in for a cause that they felt was just. So for all of you out there, understand that you are stepping into 250 years of rich history, of debauchery in many ways for what you all have seen. However, that is earned. What else do you expect 17, 18, 19, and 20-year-old kids to do with the freedoms given to them, but also to each and every single Marine out there, regardless if you are currently serving as a veteran, whether you have a home or don't, and to all the docs out there and Navy personnel that have served in capacity to support Marine infantry units in action. Thank you for your service, but most importantly, welcome home to each and every single one of you. To take us home
Thank you.
that's for those of you that know, that's a inside gig in many ways to Goats and Cookies, which is what Kevin and Lou both know very much about for their time in country. Real quick, the podcast is called Goats and Cookies. Kevin, you want to explain that real quick, and then
Absolutely. So Lou and I, when we were in Iraq, we were working with the ISF, the Iraqi Security Forces, which became the Iraqi Army after the elections on the Constitution late in 2005. Pre-elections 2005, they were the ISF, the Iraqi Security Forces, and Lou and I would mess with those guys constantly. You know, we would go up and try to, create conversation with them. But more than anything, we'd just mess with them, and we would walk up to them and be like, "Hey, man, what are you into? Like, what do you do for fun? How do you get into it? You know?" And we would just pick at them. You know, I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful to any religion, but Iraq is a Islamic nation, so they have very strict rules on how they can live. So when we would ask them these things, it was more absurd than anything else. But we would ask them, hey, like, hey, you smoke some weed, right? Like, oh, you drinking that beer, right? You know, or you drinking that whiskey, right? And they would be like, just completely appalled by our questions and be like, no, 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 no. So we came up with a slogan that is it'll be in the frame at the very end of this video, and it was no beer, no weed, no whiskey, just goats and cookies. There were goats everywhere in Iraq, and we saw them all the time. And cookies. We had just Girl Scouts, the Girl Scouts of America, and bless them for this, they dumped cookies on us. So we had, there were times when I didn't have an MRE to eat, but I had Girl Scout cookies out the asshole. So, there were goats everywhere, there were cookies everywhere, but there wasn't a stitch of weed, beer, or whiskey. And that is where the name Goats and Cookies came from for our channel. It was from our experiences in Hit, a city called Hit, H-I-T, in Iraq. Lou and I were there for the invasion of Hit. It was an experience. I'll say we saw quite a bit while we were there. We saw, if you want to polarize humanity, I would say that we saw every extreme of it. I'm sure you guys from Vietnam can relate. You saw every extreme of humanity, and that's
You
where
want to celebrate every humanity? Go to
Yeah.
Phuket, Thailand.
Thanks, Rick.
All right. Well, gentlemen, to take us home and to let you guys, get off, go to bed, go back to your wives, girlfriends, whoever. We might have to edit this out. I don't know how well this is going to work. This is a trial by error. Because of
We don't have
Zoom
sponsors
functions.
yet, man.
Oh, well, we don't have
Go for it.
sponsors
Go
yet, you're
for
right.
it.
So I'm going to share this and we're going to do a test. Can you guys hear the audio that I'm about to play right now?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to take it back. You guys are gonna sing, if you want to, just the first verse of the United States Marine Corps hymn, because it's what you Marines do. I've been to Quantico. I've seen it myself. Every Marine in the audience blasting away horribly the lyrics of the Marine Corps hymn. But without further ado, here we are.
From Montezuma to the shores of Trump, we fight our country's battles in the air on the first we fight for right and freedom, but to keep our honor we are proud to claim the pride of our United States.
So, gentlemen,
Hoorah!
Yeah.
Semper Fi, guys.
to end this out, Semper Fi to each and every single one of you that are still here. Ray and Dan, you both have impacted me in more ways than I could possibly ever express. And that's not just bullshit because of a recorded video. That's the honest truth. Ray, I have told very seldom people this, but I'll say it now. I'm working on a novel about Iwo Jima, many ways because of what I read by you, but also because of the veterans you were able to introduce me to, and I want a legacy to be left there. Dan, your legacy that you have left with me is still interviewing and reaching out to Vietnam veterans to share the healing of the wall that does heal us all and how that comes full circle. From generations to come for the families, because at some point there will no longer be Vietnam veterans here to tell that story, and it will be people like me who have to tell the story of the Vietnam veterans who came before us and the names on that wall.
Thank you for everything, Zach.
I'm just a happy guy that's happy to be here. I'm the JV kid that got pulled up to the varsity team once again. I'm just a lucky fella.
Don't sell yourself short. From Vietnam to OIF. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah.
Educators are everything we need right now.
Please do check out Tales Press and see the stuff that's on there because there's a
I got it written down, sir.
Yeah.
Trust me, Ray's a brilliant writer. You guys are gonna love it. I've said it already, but I'll say it again. Iwo Jima Blasted Again is one of my favorite novels that I've ever read, in many ways. And those of you that have experience with the Marine Corps or from the corpsman side of FMF, you'll understand that. Any final closing remarks from my Marines and Doc still here?
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi, do or die.
Kill, kill, kill.
Semper Fi.
Happy birthday, gentlemen and ladies across the world, in here, out there.
Happy birthday to each and every single one of you, Marines, men and women across the land that will see this. Thank you to each and every single one of you for what you have done for me as a civilian, for what you will continue to do. Thank you all and welcome home. Happy birthday, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank you.
birthday.
Semper Fi.
Good birthday.